Matilda, Ronald, Dahl. Throwing the hammer. The nice thing about Matilda was that if you had met her casually and talked to her, you would have thought she was a perfectly normal 5.5-year-old child. She displays almost no outward signs of her brilliance, and she never showed off. This is a very sensible and quiet little girl, you will have said to yourself. And unless for some reason you have started discussion with her about literature or mathematics, you would have known the extent of her brain power. It was therefore easy for Matilda to make friends with other children. All those in her class liked her. They knew, of course, that she was clever because they heard her being questioned by Mrs. Honey on the first day of term. And they knew also that she was allowed to sit quietly with a book during lessons and not pay attention to the teacher. Now, children of their age not serve deeply for reasons. They are far too wrapped up in their own small struggles, to worry over much about what others are doing and why. Amongst Matilda's newfound friend was a girl called Lavender. Right from the first day of term, the two of them started wandering around together during the morning break and in the lunch hour. Lavender was exceptionally small for her age, a skinny little nymph with deep brown eyes and with dark hair that was cut in a fringe across her forehead. Matilda liked her because she was gusty and adventurous. She liked Matilda for the exact same reason. Before the first week of term was up, awesome tales about the headmistress, Mrs. Trunchbull, began to filter through the newcomers. Matilda and Lavender, standing in a corner of the playground during morning break on the third day, were approached by a rough 10-year-old with boil on her nose called Horistina. "New scrubs, I suppose," Horistina said to them, looking down from her great height. She was eating from an extra-large bag of potato crisps and digging the stuff in handfuls. "Welcome to Bristol," she spraying bits of crisp out of her mouth like snowflakes. The two tiny ones, confronted by the shine, kept a watchful silence. "Have you met the Trunchbull yet?" Horistina asked. "We've seen her at prayers," Lavender said, "but we haven't met her." "You have a treat coming to you," Horistina said. "She hates very small children. She therefore loathes the bottom class and everyone in it. She thinks 5-year-olds are grubs and they haven't hatched out." In went another fistful of crisps, and when she spoke again, out spread the crumbs. "If you survive your first year, you may manage to live through the rest of your time here. But many don't survive. They often get carried out on stretchers screaming. I've seen it before." Horistina paused to observe the effect these remarks we were having on the two titchy ones. Not very much. They seemed very cool, so the large one decided to regale them with further information. "I suppose you knew the Trunchbull has locked up cupboard in her private quarters called the Chokey. Have you heard about the Chokey?" Matilda and Lavender shook their heads and continued to gaze up at the giant. Being very small, they were inclined to mistrust any creature that were larger than they were, especially senior girls. "The Chokey," Horistina went on, "is a very tall but very narrow cupboard. The floor is only 10 inches square, so you can't sit or squat on it. You have to stand, and 3 of the walls are made of cement with bits of broken glass sticking all over it, so you can't lean against them. You have to stand more or less at attention all the time. When you get locked up in there, it's terrible. Can't you lean against the door?" Matilda asked. "Don't be a draft," Horistina said. "The door got thousands of sharp, spiky nails sticking out of it. They've probably been hammered through from the outside, probably by the Trunchbull herself." "Have you been in there?" Lavender asked. "My first term, I was in there 6 times," Horistina said. "Twice for a whole day, and the other time for 2 hours each. But 2 hours is quite bad, though. It's pitch dark, and you have to stand up dead straight, and if you wobble at all, you get spiked either by the glass on the walls or the nails on the door." "Why were you put in it?" Matilda asked. "What have you done?" "The first time," Horistina said, "I poured half a tin of golden syrup onto the seat of the chair the Trunchbull was going to sit on prayers. It was wonderful. When she lowered herself into the chair, there was a loud squelching noise similar to that made by a hippopotamus when lowering its foot into the mud on the banks of the Limpo River. But you're too small and stupid to have read the Justice stories, aren't you? I've read them, Matilda said. You're a liar, Christina said ambitiously. You can't even read it, but no matter. So when the trunchbull sat down on the golden syrup, the squelch was beautiful. And when she jumped up again, the chair sort of struck to the sea of those awful green breeches she wears and came up with her for a few seconds until the thick syrup slowly came unstuck. Then she collapsed her hands to the seat of her breeches, and both hands got covered in the muck. You should have seen her elbows. But how did you know it was you? Lavender asked. A little squirrel called Ollie Boxwhistle sneaked on me, Horatina said. I knocked his front teeth out. And the trunchbull put you in the choky for a whole day? Matilda asked, gulping. A whole day long, Horatina said. I was off my rocker when she let me out. I was babbling like an idiot. What were the other things you did to get put in the choky? Lavender asked. Oh, I can't remember all of now, Horatina said. She spoke with the air of the warrior who has been in so many battles that bravery has become commonplace. It's all so long ago, she added, stuffing more crisp into her mouth. Ah, yes, I can remember one. Here's what happened. I chose a time when I knew the trunchbull was on the way teaching the sixth formers, and I put up my hands and asked to go to the box. But instead of going there, I sneaked into the trunchbull's room, and after a speedy search, I found a drawer where she kept all the gym knickers. Go on, Matilda said, spellbound. What happened next? I had sent away by post, you see, for this very powerful itching powder, Horatina said. It cost 50 pence a package, and was called the Skin Scratcher. The label said it was made from the powdered teeth of deadly snakes, and it was regarded to raise welts the size of walnuts on your skin. So I spread the stuff inside every pair of knickers in the drawer, and then folded them all up again carefully. Horatina paused to cram more crisp into her mouth. Did it work? Lavender asked. Well, Horatina said, a few days later, during prayers, the trunchbull suddenly started scratching herself like a mad down below. Aha! I said to myself, here we go. She changed for Jim already. It was pretty wonderful to be sitting there watching it all and knowing that I was the only person in the whole school who realized exactly what was going on inside the trunchbull pants. And I felt safe too. I knew I couldn't be caught. Then the scratching got worse. She couldn't stop. She must have thought she had a wasp nest down there. And then, right in the middle of the Lord's Prayer, she leapt out and grabbed her bottom and rushed out of the room. Both Matilda and Lavender was enthralled. It was quite clear to them that they were at this moment standing in the presence of a master. Here was somebody who had brought the arts of skullduggery to the highest point of perfection. Somebody, moreover, who was willing to risk their lives and limp in pursuit of her calling. They gazed in wonder at the goddess, and suddenly even the boil on her nose was no longer a blemish, but a badge of courage. But how did she catch you that time? Lavender asked, breathless with wonder. She didn't, Horatina said, but I got a whole day in the choky just the same. Why? They both asked. The trunchbull, Horatina said, has a nasty habit of guessing. When she doesn't know who the culprit is, she makes a guess at it. And the trouble is, she's often right. I was in premier suspect this time because of the golden syrup, and although I knew she didn't have any proof, nothing I said made any difference. I kept shouting. How could I done it, Mrs. Trunchbull? I didn't even know you kept any spare knickers at school. I don't even know what itching powder is. I've never heard of it. But the line didn't help me in spite of the great performance I put on. The trunchbull simply grabbed me by the one ear and rushed me to the chokey at the double and threw me inside and locked the door. That was my second all-day stretch. It was absolute torture. I was spiked and cut all over when I came out. It was like a war, Matilda said, overawed. You're darn right it was like a war, Horsina cried. And the casualties are terrific. We are the custodians, the gallant army fighting for our lives with hardly any weapons at all, and the Trunchbull is the Prince of Darkness, the Volkerpit, the Fire Dragon with all the weapons at her command. It's a tough life. We all try to support each other. You can't rely on us, Lavender said, making her height of 3 feet 2 inches stretch as tall as possible. No, I can't, Horsina said. You're only shrimps. But you never know. We may find a use for you one day in some undercover job. And tell us just a little bit more about what she does, Matilda said. Please do. I mustn't frighten you before you've been here for a week, Horsina said. You won't, Lavender said. We may be small, but we're quite tough. Listen to this, Horsina said. Only yesterday the Trunchbull caught a boy called Julius Roxwintle eating licorice, a source during the scripture lesson, and she simply picked him up by one arm and flung him clear out of the open room window. Our class is 1 floor up, and we saw Julius Roxwintle go sailing out over the garden like a frisbee and landing with a thump in the middle of the lettuces. Then the Trunchbull turned to us and said, From now on, anybody caught eating in class go straight out of the window. Did this Julius Winkle break any bones? Lavender asked. Only a few, Horsina said. You've got to remember that the Trunchbull once threw a hammer from the Britons in the Olympics. So she was very proud of her right arm. What's throwing the hammer? Lavender asked. The hammer, Horsina said, is actually a really great cannonball on the end at a long bit of wire, and the thrower twists it around and round his or her head faster and faster and lets it go. You have to be terrifically strong. The Trunchbull will throw anything around just to keep her arm in it, especially children. Good heavens, Lavender said. I once heard her say, Horsina went on, that a large boy in about the same weight as an Olympic hammer, and there he very useful for practicing with. At that point, something strange happened. The playground, which up to then had been filled with shrieks and the shoutings of children at play, all at once became silent as the grave. Watch out, Horsina whispered. Matilda and Lavender glanced around and saw the gigantic creature of Mrs. Trunchbull advancing through the crowd of boys and girls with mincing strides. The children drew back hastily to let her through, and her progress across the outfit was like that of a mouse going through the Red Sea when the water parted. A formidable figure she was too, in her belted smock and green breeches. Below the knees, her calf muscles stood out like grapefruits inside the stocking. Amanda Trips, she was shouting. You, Amanda Trips, come here. Hold your hat, Horsina whispered. What's going to happen? Lavender whispered back. That idiot Amanda, Horsina said, has let her hair grow even longer during the holes, and her mother has planted it into pigtails. Silly thing to do. Why silly? Matilda asked. If there's one thing the Trunchbull can't stand, it's pigtails, Horsina said. Matilda and Lavender saw the giant in green breeches advancing upon the girl of about 10 who had a pair of planted golden pigtails hanging over her shoulders. Each pigtail has a blue slim below at the end of it, and it all looked very pretty. The girl wearing the pigtails, Amanda Tripp, stood quite well, watching the advancing giant, and the expression on her face was one that you might find on the face of a person who is trapped in a small field with an orange bowl which is charged flat out towards her. The girl glued to the spot, terror-struck, pop-eyed, quivering, known for a certain reason the day of the judgment had come for her at last. Mrs. Trunchbull had now reached the victim and stood towering over it. "I want those filthy pigtails off before you come back to school tomorrow," she barked. "Chop them off and throw them in the dustbin. You understand?" Amanda, paralyzed with fright, managed to stutter. "My mommy likes them. She plants them for me every morning. Your mommy's a twit. Your mommy's a twit," the Trunchbull bellowed. She pointed a finger the size of a salami at the child's head and shouted, "You look like a rat with those tails coming out of your head." "My mommy thinks I look lovely, Mrs. Trunchbull," Amanda stuttered, shaking like a bamaj. "I don't give a tinker toot what your mommy thinks," the Trunchbull yelled, and with that she lunged forward and grabbed hold of Amanda's pigtail in her right fist and lifted the girl clear off the ground. Then she started swinging her round and round her head faster and faster, and Amanda was screaming blue murder, and the Trunchbull was yelling, "I'll give those pigtails, you little rat." "Shade of the Olympics," Horatina murmured. "Who's getting up speed now, just like she does with the hammer. 10-1, she's going to throw her." And now the Trunchbull was leaning back against the weight of a twirling girl to provoking experimentally on her toes, spinning round and round, and soon Amanda Tripp was traveling so fast she became a blur, and suddenly, with mighty grunt, the Trunchbull let go of her pigtails, and Amanda went sailing like a rocket right over the wire fence of the playground and high up into the sky. "Well done, sir," somebody shouted from across the playground, and Matilda, who was mesmerized by the whole crazy affair, saw Amanda Tripp descending in a long, graceful parlobia onto the playing field beyond. She landed on the grass and bounced 3 times and finally came to rest. Then, amazingly, she sat up. She looked a trifle dazed, and who could blame her? But after a minute or so, she was on her feet again and tottering back towards the playground. The Trunchbull stood in the playground and dusting off her hands. "Not bad," she said, "considering I'm not a strict training. Not bad at all." And then she strode away. "She's mad," Horatina said. "But don't your parents complain?" Matilda asked. "Wouldn't yours?" Horatina asked. I know mine wouldn't. She treats the mothers and fathers just the same as their children, as they were scared to death of her. "I'll be seeing you sometime, you two." And with that she sauntered away.